Bay is like no place else.
Wait, you can't recycle the bag? You have to throw it away.
Proper recycling keeps it that way for everyone. Bags tangle in machinery and can bring sorting efforts to a halt.
No bags.
Trash the bags and keep our recycling program moving forward.
No, Mom, look, no plastic bags.
Do your part to keep our recycling bag-free. Trash the tanglers or return them to participating retailers. For more information, visit tampabayrecycles.org.
These are the jobs you may not see every day, but just know we're working hard to make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play. Subscribe to our YouTube page for more great county-related videos, only on HTV.
Hey, would you do me a favor? Grab your phone or smart device and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
good morning, everybody. Welcome to the March 12th meeting of the Hillsborough TPO. I would like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to, the county staff has asked me to remind everybody to activate and then close their microphone back off when they're done speaking. Apparently, we've had some feedback issues if you don't turn the mic back off, and you might as well not be speaking if you don't turn the mic on, right? So please keep that in mind. And if you would, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to ask the recording secretary to read the roll, but prior to that, I do have a letter from Commissioner Glenn Myers addressed to Chair Ross. Please be advised that I am unable to attend the Wednesday, March 12th meeting of the TPO Board due to unexpected circumstances. Please read the reason for my absence into the record. Thank you, Commissioner Myers. And so, Ms. Ramos, would you please read the roll? Call roll.
Good morning. Mayor Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Wostel.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Myers is excused. Commissioner Bowles. Here. Commissioner Miller. Councilmember Maniscalco. Here. Councilmember Clendenin.
Here.
Councilmember Hertzeg.
Here.
Mayor Kilton.
Here.
School Board Member Gray.
Here.
Charles Klug.
Here.
Gina Dew. Bob Frey.
Here.
Gary Hatfield.
Present.
And Planning Commissioner Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Very good. Thank you. And I know we have rotating recording secretaries, and sometimes it's hard to know the pronunciation, but it's Charles Klug and Bob Fry.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. So I'd like to next call retiring Joe Lopano to the podium. Yes. So as everybody knows, Joe is retiring as the CEO of Tampa International Airport after a long time. Let's see, 14, how long?
14.
14 is what I
Yes.
thought. Yeah, 14 years. Been a few changes in 14 years at the airport over his time. So a lot of changes, actually, and airport's added at least, and I think this is probably a low number, at least 14 international flights coming in and out of the airport under Joe's leadership. It's, as everybody knows, it's undergone multi-billion-dollar expansions of Conracs and parking garages and new airside Ds on the way, and I mean, it's just hard to even picture what the airport used to look like 15 years ago, and it's also added a lot of dining lineups, and unfortunately, a lot of those are post-security, so you got to change airlines in order to go enjoy some of these restaurants. You have to shop and see which airside they're on. It's been named the best airport in the U.S. by nearly every recognizable rating organization there is. It seems like every year they're best airport in the universe or wherever.
Galaxy.
Yeah. In retirement, Joe's going to spend more time with his family in Indian Rocks Beach and in Dallas. And in his successor, I think most of us know, or Michael Stevens, has big shoes to fill, and we look forward to welcoming him to the TPO. Gina, you said it in April, I think, right?
Yes, he'll be here next month.
Okay, good. And so after my prediction is after 2 meetings that we'll see Gina back every month. And so I have Joe, I have a plaque here for you, and I commented this morning as I signed this that anybody who does 14 years on the TPO should get a lot more than a plaque. I think you should get like a 100-year-old bottle of scotch or something. 14 years on the TPO is a very difficult. So thank you, and I'd like to invite you to say a few words.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the recognition. And it's a pleasure to be here before you. 14 years ago, I came here, I didn't know anybody. And now I have lots of friends and lots of colleagues like you that I've served with. And I will tell you, it's been not always easy serving on this board, but it's always been meaningful. And what we do here is extremely important. And so I just leave you with that message, and I wish you all the very best, and do the right thing for Tampa International Airport and make us #1 all the time. Thank you.
So Dr. Wong, how are we doing this? What's the lineup for this?
Joe, if you'd like to come join us behind the dais, we'd like to get some photos of you with all the board members. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a photograph up here.
Mayor Ross, I want it known for the record, I've been on this board for more than 14 years.
You have?
The scotch quality is going to go up with years of service.
I remember when Mayor Lott stepped off after, it was like 17 years, I think it was. I never thought that'd be awarding you a plaque.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, right? You need to tighten up a little bit? Yes. Yeah.
Alan, you want to?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. We have Alan coming. We have a straggler.
Nobody ever told me while getting elected there was going to be so many pictures.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, thanks.
All right, board members, we have two sets of minutes to approve. One is the regular meeting minutes from February 12th, and the other is the public hearing minutes of the same date. Are there motions? That's for the regular meeting? Yes, sir. Okay. A motion by Councilmember Maniscalco, and who did, Alan? Councilmember Clendenin was the second. Any discussion or corrections to the board, to the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? No nays. Do we have adopted the regular meeting minutes? And now we need a motion for the public hearing minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Maniscalco, seconded by Commissioner Cohen. Any corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye. 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 Minutes are adopted. Next are public comment on items on the agenda. I have one request to speak from Rick Fernandez. Is he online?
I am, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right, cool. Good morning, all. I think I started my video, but maybe not. There it is. I suppose I could have, for the record, I'm Rick Fernandez out of Tampa Heights. I suppose I could have offered this comment as part of my CAC Chair's report, but honestly, we didn't cover this at the CAC meeting, so I thought it better to use my 3 minutes as public comment as an individual. I wanted to bring to the board's attention an item that is on your agenda, but it's in the addendum portion under announcements. The Department of Transportation order ensuring reliance upon sound economic analysis, et cetera, et cetera. This was put into our addendum package as well, and frankly didn't get much attention at the CAC meeting until some of us actually began reading it after the meeting. And I would hope that we might be able to bring this particular DOT order up for discussion at the board level sooner rather than later. Reading from the order, this order updates and resets principles and standards underpinning the U.S. Department of Transportation policies. In the policies section, paragraph 5, the following principles govern the implementation and administration of all DOT policies, programs, and activities. Then in subparagraph F under policies, DOT supported or assisted programs shall prioritize projects and goals that, and now I'm extracting what I viewed as the most draconian items, that give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. That's 1. 2, prohibit recipients of DOT support or assistance from imposing vaccine and mask mandates. And the third one, require local compliance or cooperation with federal immigration enforcement and with other goals and objectives specified by the President of the United States and the Secretary. There are other things in this order that cause me concern, but those three in particular were concerning, and not for political reasons, but quite honestly, what the hell does that mean? And how does it, how do you apply this particular order to our review of projects at the county, local, and district levels? This is something that needs to be addressed, and people need to understand what it means and how it will be applied going forward before someone simply makes a motion at some future TPO board meeting based on the order and have that be a matter of first impression. So if I've accomplished nothing else this morning, I hope I've at least highlighted that for your purposes, if not today, at a future meeting, and maybe some of you will take additional time to read the document. I appreciate your consideration and courtesy, and whenever you're ready, I'll provide my CAC report.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. We currently, if this is correct, we don't have anybody else signed up for public comment. Is that? Okay. Well, we will roll right into committee reports and advance comments. And Mr. Fernandez, you are recognized as the CAC chair for your report.
Thank you, sir. And for the record, Rick Fernandez. I have the privilege of chairing your Citizens Advisory Committee. This is my report of our March 5th, 2025 meeting. We easily met in-room quorum requirements, so we're able to move forward and litigate the action items before us. We had 3 action items at the meeting, one of which is actually part of your consent agenda. The other 2 are part of your action item agenda. The consent agenda item on your document is the performance targets. We also addressed TIP amendments and public participation plan measures of effectiveness. The first then, TPO staff presented the performance targets for pavement and bridge condition and system reliability. Again, this is in your consent agenda. CAC members asked questions about where the data comes from, the concept of reliability, and how it is measured. The CAC recommended the TPO board approve the updated pavement and bridge condition target for the percent of NHS bridges in poor condition and maintain the currently adopted system reliability targets. I assume that is consistent with what you folks will intend to do today, again, since this is in your consent agenda materials. The second action item for us, the TPO staff presented the TIP amendments for HART maintenance, site remediation, and modernization phase 1 and Hillsborough County smart traffic network. CAC members discussed the projects, asking questions about the funding sources, how the corridors were selected for the smart traffic network, and the potential impacts of the smart traffic network, such as the future US 301 widening in North Hillsborough County and Pasco County. The CAC recommended the TPO board approve the amendments to the FY 25 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program. The third action item, also appearing on your action item agenda. TPO staff presented the Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Report for 2022 through 2024. CAC members discussed the materials in the presentation, focusing primarily on the recommendations. Members discussed the importance of tip signs. Those are those big yellow signs that you see around the city and county in advance of meetings, telling the public that a meeting is coming and the basics regarding that meeting, including the roll forward amendments and the value of using surveys and in-person events, particularly meeting people where they are and doing post-meeting evaluations. A CAC member provided prepared comments on the public participation plan, and those comments are included verbatim in your advanced comments. They're rather lengthy. I hope you'll take the time to review them. They were presented by Chris Vella, who has been a very active member of the CAC and active before this board on numerous occasions. The CAC recommended the TPO board accept the 2025 Measures of Effectiveness Report with 2 edits. Please take note of this. Removal of the recommendation to only require tip signs for tip amendments and not for roll forward amendments, and to include post-meeting evaluations. Let me just amplify for a moment. One of the recommendations that we received was that the public not be noticed in the future for roll forward amendments. We objected to that. We felt that roll forward amendments are just as important as regular tip amendments, and the public should be made aware when those hearings are going to take place, not simply, pushed in, if you will, under the wire or under the radar. I don't mean to imply anything nefarious, but we should be advised of roll forward amendments. So that was probably, interestingly, the thing that got the most communication or conversation out of the CAC. That's it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to stand for them. Otherwise, respectfully submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Fernandez? Seeing none, Harmony McGee from our TPO staff is here to prepare a report. Good morning.
Good morning, Harmony McGee, TPO staff. Regarding today's action items, the technical advisory clarification was required and phase added now. It was confirmed that only added was about whether two might be broken into multiple projects in the future, which was clarified as not being the case. Members also inquired about whether HART would move forward with electric vehicle charging in the master plan. HART staff clarified that they are considering hydrogen, but have not ruled out exploring other technologies. Other discussions included how the bus parking area will change and how stormwater would be addressed with the possibility of adding a pond. The public participation plan measures of effectiveness report was recommended for approval by the Livable Roadways, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory, and Technical Advisory Committees, as well as the Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating Board. The Livable Roadways Committee asked about ADA compliance, the selection process for focus groups, and sought clarification on the community air monitoring network. TPO staff responded by stating that we would utilize our contacts within the community that serve ADA people groups when developing future surveys to ensure compliance. It was also clarified that focus groups are selected based on the location of a project and the community groups it may impact. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee inquired about the portion of the measures of effectiveness that details actions taken or changes made by TPO staff, the board, or external agencies based on community input. It was suggested that this information be shared with community members to raise awareness. TPO staff noted that the report is accessible via our website and that other additional ways of sharing this information will be considered. The Technical Advisory Committee discussed the STAR rating system and how the plan performed with the data. Clarification was requested about the visibility and productivity numbers and whether they were a 3-year average. TPO staff clarified that the data was a total of all 3 years and not an average. It was also explained that where possible, numbers were averaged by year when making comparisons to the last measures of effectiveness report rather than comparing 3 years to 2 years of data. Public comments were received via social media. On Facebook, Sarasota Mobility Alliance expressed support for Best Foot Forward and encouraged local government and law enforcement agencies to do the same. Dave Coleman commented on the Safe Streets Week Summit, voicing criticism of law enforcement and transportation agencies. In response to our post about the proposed regional merger, Laura Adrianson questioned how the merger would address core transportation challenges, while Jason Marlowe and David Young also opposed the merger. On LinkedIn, Conroy J. shared enthusiasm for Florida Bicycle Month, celebrating with the Florida Bicycle Association. We also received a written public comment from Chris Vela expressing reservations regarding the approval of the public participation plan due to longstanding communication issues among TPO staff, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and the board. Vela stated that inconsistent and unverified information has led to misunderstandings about LRTP and TIP projects prior to key public hearings. He highlighted a particular concern following an emergency hearing held without adequate accommodation that resulted in the removal of the I-275 Boulevard study from the UPWP, effectively overturning nearly 4 years of advocacy despite strong community support. Vela further stated that he believes the public input process is flawed, citing unclear decision-making criteria and biases and project recommendations that have contributed to diminished public trust. He recommends a comprehensive review of the TPO's public input process to ensure transparency, clarity, and effective community engagement. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I would actually like to pull the performance targets for pavement and bridge condition and system reliability for just one slide conversation that I had with Dr. Wong yesterday.
Very well, Councilmember. That item will now become under action items, bullet C. Very well. So what's remaining on the consent agenda are committee appointments, and is there a motion to approve that? Motion by Councilmember Maniscalco, seconded by Commissioner Cohen. Any comments? Well, never mind, it's not a debatable motion. So all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? No nays. Consent agenda is adopted. Next, action items. Our first action item is a TIP amendment regarding Hart's Maintenance Site Remediation and Modernization Phase 1 and Hillsborough County Smart Traffic Network, and TPO staff member Elizabeth Watkins is going to explain. Good morning.
Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff. There are two TIP amendments for your consideration today. Both projects, one discretionary federal grants that need to be added into the Transportation Improvement Program so that they can access those federal funds. The first project is Hart's Heavy Maintenance Facility. As you all know, this is a long-standing Hart priority, with the facility originally being built over 45 years ago, intending to serve trucks, not transit buses. There are many challenges, including outdated equipment, inadequate space, and flooding challenges that present operational difficulties to Hart. So Hart recently won a RAISE grant to address phase 1 of the heavy maintenance facility. And those elements include addressing stormwater remediation, adding a service lane, and adding security fencing to the perimeter. This is an existing site plan. It is broken up into 2 phases. The first is fully funded with this grant, but phase 2 will include the actual building and demolition of the current structures and additional stormwater improvements that are needed. So again, this project is being added to the TIP so that Hart can access this $23 million RAISE grant that was awarded earlier this year. The second project for your consideration is Hillsborough County's SMART Network. This project is intended to improve smart traffic technology and safety and mobility along 6 different corridors across the county. It encompasses about 40 miles of arterial streets in Temple Terrace and City of Tampa and an unincorporated county. And a big portion of this grant is for capital and hardware improvements, including new traffic signal cabinets, advanced traffic controllers, vehicle detection systems, as well as onboard units for school bus safety to provide stop arm activated notifications and potentially set the buses up for transit signal priority. Currently, the current system can only give that priority to transit buses, so this is a really innovative approach to leveraging that technology with school buses. And the final component is a data exchange in order to communicate lane and road closure events through your mobile navigation apps, further enhancing safety so drivers know if there's a work zone or a road rerouting is necessary. So this project is being added to include that $3 million ATTAIN grant that the county won last fall. So the action before your consideration today is to approve by roll call vote these amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program. We have our colleagues from Hillsborough County Public Works and HART to also help address any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Are there questions for Ms. Watkins? Board Member Gray.
Thank you, Chair Ross. My question is regarding the TIP amendment, HART maintenance site remediation. So from a liability, and I'll address the first, number one, when we talk about natural gas buses with plans for CNG and/or hydrogen-fueled vehicles, is there a liability clause in there for future liability in case there's some harm that comes to these vehicles carrying these substances?
So I don't know that, but I'll see if my colleague from HART can answer. I know the majority of HART's fleet is CNG, but maybe Jesus, if you could provide any context about if there's liability clauses.
Yeah. Good morning,
Good
TPO
morning.
board. Jesus Perez Garcia, HART staff. I would need to check. That sounds like a legal question. I would need to check with our legal department, see if they have any knowledge of that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there other questions regarding the TIP amendments? Ms. Watkins, I have one. You mentioned the school bus priority that could potentially result from the Hillsborough County Smart Traffic Network enhancements. So as a layperson, I don't know that much about this new technology, but I know what priority means, and that means we're going to turn the signals green for school buses. But I'm just concerned about the coordination of this. So we have, at least in our city, we have fire trucks and ambulances that are turning the signals green usually after they're long gone, which is kind of a frustration for me. I don't think that works very well, at least not the stuff that we have. And then we have the potential for HART buses to turn the light green in advance of them, and now we're going to do school buses too. And you know, these busy times of the day, like in the morning when everybody's trying to get to work and we're trying to get the kids to school, we're trying to get people on the buses to, I mean, how is this, what's the fallout from this going to be? I mean, is the light ever going to turn green for the poor other people that are, I mean, how is that going to work?
Maybe I'll defer to my colleagues in the Operations Center, but at a high level, I know the emergency vehicles, they get signal preemption, while the transit signal is more priority. But I don't know if Rafael, if you could add to that.
Hi, I'm Rafael de Dios from the Hillsborough County TMC, Traffic Management Center. So the project that we are deploying is, right now we're almost done, is the preemption for the fire trucks, which will basically put red to all the other approaches and provide green to the fire trucks apparatuses. What we're trying to do here is provide priority, which the old system that HART has in one of our two corridors in the county is being decommissioned because we are prioritizing the new system. By doing so, we're basically provide the priority right now to school buses, and we're planning to have conversations with HART to incorporate their CAT AVL, which is that GPS system that tracks the buses, to our system, which will provide priority, which means it will either start the green a little bit earlier or end the green a little bit later than what it's supposed to. So again, it'll provide that extra green either at the very beginning when they should get the green, or a little bit later, all based on thresholds. That has to be discussed.
Okay, so my question for you is, when we do this, and we expand this preemption for longer green lights for certain vehicles, when we study the data to see how effective this is, are we going to study all the data, or are we just going to say, well, school buses have been arriving, 8% reduction in commute time or whatever, but are we going to study the commute times for the cross traffic as well to say, well, what's the cost of that? So now we just made a commute for these people, 18% longer. Or in order to really understand the effectiveness, we'd have to look at both sides of that equation to see the cost benefit to this.
Yes.
Is that how the data is going to be collected?
So prior to this project starting, we incorporated a platform that tracks the travel time, which started with the TPO utilizing it, and we had basically inherited that platform. And again, what does is track travel time that it gets purchased from vehicle manufacturers and cellular devices. And what we get out of it is speed and travel time reliability and other measures of effectiveness. So what we incorporated that information into a dashboard, and we're currently tracking, we've been tracking it for about 3 years already, travel time, reliability, and planning travel index. So we are currently doing it, and now with the incorporation of the preemption system, we're tracking the performance of the system in comparison to the travel time. So we are on the process of merging those two data sets and seeing the effect behind it, because as you're saying, there's few locations that by having a hard preemption on any signal around the county will add delay. So if the signal is over capacity right now, we have to find a way with the logistics of the controller to try to make it cycle back and keep it consistent with what we currently have and been deploying for years. So again, if there's a signal that has, or a traffic signal that has a capacity problem, we won't be able to solve that because of, just providing the system. It will add some delay, but we can find ways to mitigate that harsher extra delay added to the network.
Okay, so two things. One, I didn't hear you specifically answer the question. Are we measuring the data from the other cross traffic
Yes.
as well? We are.
Yes, yes.
And two is, if you make the light green longer for this section, it has to be red longer for the other people. So, and just glossing over that and saying, well, we'll have to take that into account, or we'll have to find ways to mitigate it. There is no mitigating that, as people are waiting in traffic longer than they were. Yep. For the ones who are red. Yep. There is no mitigating that unless you're going to do a flyover.
There are actually strategies within the traffic controller. So again, yes, you're going to stop traffic, but there's ways to revert and get back extra time that you make somebody wait longer. The controller can actually recognize those approaches that are being waiting the longest and provide extra time to flush them out.
Yeah, but then you just made the light red for the people you were trying to make the green for.
There's a win and lose situation, with every major system that you implement right now. We're finishing the county-wide deployment, and then after that, we'll start fine-tuning along the way. Again, along the deployment, it's up to almost 600 signals. We've been, again, fine-tuning as we go, but we needed to deploy the system first with a templated configuration that we can all agree to. And then if we have hotspots that we have to tweak along the way, we'll do it, and we'll come with a fine-tuning phase to tweak those locations across the board.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Bowles.
As I understand with the preemption systems, and I know, again, my history, I used to work in the fire service. I think I could be wrong, but I don't know if Temple Terrace uses an Opticon system, which is it's kind of like, it would be an analog, kind of versus digital. So an analog system where it has a strobe and there's a receiver on top of the light that sees the strobe when the fire or emergency vehicle is in emergency mode, and it receives that. So the systems that they're talking about, at least with Hillsborough County and probably with City of Tampa too, is AVL systems, which are more digital based. So they sense when it's coming based on GPS, and I think they're probably a little more reactive and quicker response than what you would see like at Fowler. If you're going through Fowler, all those lights change, the fire trucks go through, and everyone just sits there for another 30 seconds waiting for it. With the AVL systems, it anticipates when the truck is coming up, at least in this I'm using for fire, comes up, and then as it pulls through, everything kind of reverts back to the flow. So there may be a quicker response than what you may be accustomed to or have seen in the past. But I think that in what we've come to find out with at least the preemption components with the fire rescue or police and whatnot, that they have been tweaking those as they go along, and they're pretty much on all the artery roads. Am I incorrect or correct?
You are correct, yes. Okay. So
I think that some regard to some of your concerns could be alleviated, but I think once Temple Terrace kind of gets integrated into that. Do all the buses have AVLs on them?
Yes.
So
if
school
I'm
buses
correct,
have an
yes.
AVL as
They
well?
have a separate system that we have to basically
Integrate in?
integrate with, so they can, we can tag along and make sure that they receive priority. But that's a different project that we need to work on. Right now, our focus is the school buses.
And we're just, in your planning, this is just in the planning phase. It's not, you're looking at it. It's not going to be implemented tomorrow.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, right now, we set up we got the approval, we have already the idea. We just have to now go into a conversation with the public school system, transportation team, and highlight those buses within, their, I guess, hotspots.
Right.
They will have to tell us which locations are those, and then we can tag along and make sure that we have the correct programming in the controller.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Board Member Fry, and then Board Member Gray.
You said the school buses were priority, correct, not preemption?
Only priority, yes. So the hierarchy level works on, fire apparatus will get priority, the same as preemption, same as the railroad. And above, below that, then you'll get the buses, regular buses, and the school buses alongside. So again, they'll be sort of in the same category.
And the other question I have is, the city and the county have invested in ATMS systems for their signals in the last 5 years and coming up forward. And those systems are designed to work within priority, to work more efficiently with AI and more digital analog. So it all works together to try to make the system work better. But there is, you have to get there.
Board Member Gray.
Thank you. To be consistent with the concerns of Chair Ross, we as I'm on the school board, we have so far no knowledge of this preemption. And I think Mr. Bowles asked, is there a timeline, or suggested a timeline? Do you have a timeline yet, or is this coming forward in another year? And then I have one other point to ask you.
Yeah, so the timeline was based on, I believe it was 2 to 3 years deployment, but the priority can be deployed earlier than that, right? Because the priority, it's a unit, an onboard unit that gets installed in the buses. Then along with that, you program the database and then fine tune on the road. So it's a project that is within the big one, and we just have to work it, again, with the transportation team to find out, which ones are those locations, so we can bring our engineering firm along and fine tune along the way, the same as we perform with other traffic signals, retiming projects, and any tweaks that we get along the way.
Yeah, and just joining in with possible frustration, we do have the new camera system. In the first week that we had it, in other words, people that go through the bus stop line, the handle that goes out, we had over 11,000 citations within 2 or 3 days. So when we talk about frustration of the drivers and preemption, it's definitely, that communication piece is going to be essential, because now people will be more in a hurry, they gotta wait a little bit more, da-da-da. So, but keep that in mind, because we're charging, the folks that go through these bus stops are being charged a pretty heavy-duty amount. So just throwing that out there. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Board members, any other questions regarding these items? If not, thank you very much. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilmember Maniscalco, seconded by Board Member Gray. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. I even wrote the note and I still forgot it. Elizabeth even told me and I still forgot it. So, Ms. Ramos, would you please call a roll call vote?
Mayor Ross?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolstel?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen? Yes. Commissioner Bowles?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller? Councilmember Maniscalco?
Yes.
Councilmember Clendenin?
Yes.
Councilmember Hurtak?
Yes.
Mayor Kilton?
Yes.
School Board Member Gray?
Yes.
Charles Klug?
Yes.
Gina Fry? I'm sorry, Gina Du? Yes. Sorry. Bob Fry?
Yes.
Gary Hartfield?
Yes.
And Planning Commissioner Joseph?
Yes.
Motion carries 14-0.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos.
Thank you.
Next item is a public participation plan measures of effectiveness report for 2022 to 2024. I believe Harmony McGee is here to present. Welcome back.
Thank you. So as you heard, I'll be presenting on the public participation plan's measures of effectiveness report. This report covers 3 years, so 2022, 2023, and 2024. So just a little background about what the measures of effectiveness report is. It evaluates public engagement. So it coincides with our public participation plan, which is our set of standards and procedures for how we do public engagement. It recommends improvement, so how can we continue to better our public engagement and the opportunities we provide the public. And it also demonstrates an interest in public input and how we steward the feedback that we receive. There are 4 performance measures, so visibility and productivity, participation opportunities, public interest and feedback, and response to public input. So for this measures of effectiveness report, this is our first time doing a scorecard. We use a star system, so for each of the measures, we at least met expectations with exceeding expectations for public interest and feedback. I will like to note that for this scorecard, we would eventually like to move to more of something like a point system or something more concise that can be comparable year to year, but because this is our first time doing a scorecard, we just did something that's meant to be more of an overview, but we will be working on improving this. So starting off with visibility and productivity, this kind of covers the different means that we use to reach the public and get in front of the public eye. So for Facebook content, our content was seen over 68,000 times. We had 760 media mentions, so that's interviews, articles, and et cetera. We had 165 tip signs, which were done in English and Spanish, as well as we mailed 30,000 flyers. For participation opportunities, we had 93 outreach events in total, with 45 of those events being LRTP events. Our highest attended events was Leadership Tampa, our presentation at the school board workshop, and also our LRTP presentation in Sun City Center. For public interest and feedback, these 4 topics were the ones that the public showed the most interest in. So we have the Access 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan, the Transportation Improvement Program, the Community Air Monitoring Network, and the Tampa Bay MPO merger. Now we'll transition to responses to public input. When analyzing the responses to public input, we categorize them by 3 different types. So there are recommendations, board actions, and external actions. An example of a recommendation would be the Tampa School Transportation Survey, in which we receive feedback from school administrators regarding issues such as school circulation and speed issues. And in the final report, TPO staff provided a recommendation such as speed enforcement strategies. For board actions, those are actions taken by the board based upon feedback received from the public. One notable action that this board has taken was the decision to make the changes that were recommended by the Citizens Advisory Committee to change the rankings in the 2024 list of priority projects. For external actions are actions that were taken by external agencies based upon feedback that was received at a TPO meeting. So an example of this would be how a citizen expressed concerns that the Gibsonton Drive at Fern Hill Drive interchange project outlined in the LRTP was listed for a later year than initially planned, and the Hillsborough County staff responded by ensuring that treatments were made to the interchange in the interim to aid in treating that area. For notable successes and collaborations, we have the Access 2050 LRTP, which garnered over 4,000 survey responses. We have the Community Air Monitoring Network, which also had its first summit in 2024, and our FLIP and FLIP Junior programs, which stands for Future Leaders in Planning. Also notably, the public engagement for the Access 2050 LRTP received an award from APA Suncoast. Now, just to follow up on the recommendations that were made in the last Measures of Effectiveness report, this just defines some of the ways that we implemented those recommendations. So some of the standouts include clarifying our TPO purpose. So recently a graphic was created for the CAC to kind of explain the core documents of the TPO and how they work together, which is now widely available to the public via our website. For community groups, one way that community groups were implemented was through the Vision Zero SLI and water study focus groups. And also just wanting to build a culture of awareness, the Community Air Monitoring Network has done a great job at doing that as well. Now we'll move forward to the 2025 report recommendations. The first recommendation is for ADA compliance. We would like to transition to using ArcGIS Survey 123 as our primary survey tool, just to ensure that moving forward, all of our project surveys are ADA compliant and accessible. For tip signs, we would like to only require tip signs for tip amendments and not roll forward amendments. We would like to implement this simply because roll forward amendments have already had public engagement conducted for them, since they would have already been in the tip, and so it would be more redundant to produce more signage for them. For combating survey fatigue, we would like to shift our feedback prioritization from the quantity of feedback to the quality. And one strategy that we would like to use to do that is what you heard me reference for the Vision Zero study, which is using focus groups to kind of hone in on more specific community groups. We would also like to expand our online presence, specifically on YouTube. Currently, we only use the YouTube to post meeting recordings, but we would like to use that as a means for public engagement, so posting more interactive and engaging videos to educate and raise awareness about what the TPO does. For committee processes, we would like to do an assessment on the committee processes to ensure the decisions are influential and impactful. In light of the recent storms that our community has faced, we would also like to develop a standardized process for meeting postponements as a part of a larger initiative for emergency preparedness. Today's recommended action is to accept the 2025 Measures of Effectiveness report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Questions, board members? Yes.
I had a quick question. I'm wondering, on the survey software that you were talking about, what do we use for surveys now?
Currently, for the LRTP, we use MetroQuest.
MetroQuest. And is there another contract coming for is there another cost for the ArcGIS survey?
We already currently use ArcGIS, so it's free.
It's in there, okay, thanks.
Other questions? Motion by Councilmember Clendenden, seconded by Commissioner Cohen. No, Councilmember Maniscalco, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking right at you. So, I do have one suggestion, and I think I talked to Dr. Wong about this. The public outreach, the numbers that you provide, how many people you've touched, how much input you've gotten, those numbers would be more meaningful if we could get year-over-year data. Because if you look at those numbers just in a vacuum, you don't know whether they're trending up, down, staying flat. It would be, I think, you guys are being very successful, and I think having a couple of years worth of data to show that would better exemplify that you're being successful as opposed to just annual data that if you don't have something to compare that to, you don't know whether that's good or bad. So, other discussion of the motion? Yes, Mr. Fry.
Typically, the survey versus focus groups, I have a question. Typically, we use survey to get a larger swath of the population to get their opinion. Focus groups are usually really, smaller groups. Is there a process and procedure in determining the focus groups and how you're going to make sure they're getting a representative sample and things along those lines to make sure that it is truly an apples-to-apples change as opposed to a totally different focus?
Yes, I think it would specifically depend on the scope of the project, like what portion of the community it covers, I think will determine what methodology we utilize. And I know for an upcoming study that we're doing that is Vision Zero oriented, we're using a mixture of both. So I think it just depends on the scope of the project and how wide of an area it covers.
And that process will be built into
Yes.
Other discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? No nays. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we will hear. This is a roll call also? Yeah, this is a voice vote. Yep. Yeah, I know, I'm going to that next. So now pulled from the consent agenda is performance targets for payment and bridge condition and system reliability. That was pulled from the consent agenda and will now be Dr. Wong. I'm not sure who's going to present this. Okay, welcome, Mr. McDonald.
All right, good morning, TPO Board. I'm Connor Trejos McDonald. Just a quick question. Would it be the board's preference to go through the full presentation or reference a specific slide? I think that was discussed a little before, so just
I will defer to Councilmember Hurtak, who pulled the items.
I just really want to reference one specific slide. I believe it's the second to the last or the last slide.
Absolutely. Let's see. Here, maybe?
Yes, perfect. So this report card is talking about travel time reliability and non-interstate reliability. The TPO's target is 90%. And these were set in, I believe, Dr. Wong said 2019.
23 most recently, and then prior to that, 2019.
Yes, but we kept the numbers from 2019. We didn't change them. So obviously, non-interstate reliability is not going to get to 90% in the future because of all the increased traffic. And that brought me to one of the issues that we're experiencing in the city of Tampa and probably in other parts of the county, and that is the issue of blocking the box, which is when you get to an intersection, and I always like to explain Florida Avenue and Hillsborough Avenue. So if you're on Florida Avenue heading north and traffic is heading east on Hillsborough, when the light turns red, people are still sitting in the intersection, which doesn't allow people on Florida Avenue to go north, creating a traffic issue. So one of the things, we aren't allowed to use block the box cameras. It's called blocking the box when you sit in the intersection. And we aren't allowed to use red light cameras for that. We're not allowed to use cameras at all, according to the state. But we have to find something to do to solve this problem, because this is a huge part, at least in the morning and the evening traffic patterns of people not being able to get where they're going. So I think it's a good segue to a lot of the conversation we've had today. So all I would like to do is ask staff to report on block the box efforts. So maybe we can move this forward, hear a little bit of ideas that TPO staff has, and possibly bring this forward to the legislature in the next legislative session.
Commissioner Cohen.
I just want to ask you a question to clarify. You're not talking about people that are in the middle of the intersection because they're making a left-hand turn. No. You're talking about the people that are there because they're literally stuck. They went into the middle of the intersection because they're following the traffic in front of them and they got stuck there.
Yes, but they're sort of following the traffic, but the traffic is at a standstill, so they know better.
Right,
And you
stuck is generous.
Stuck is generous. So, but it seems to be and I actually was. Justin Hall and I were on a tour on a Friday afternoon, and we were going to look at the new fencing by the expansion of the interstate, the new underpasses, and he was surprised by it. I was like, no, this is one of the things that we're constantly having. It's not just Hillsborough Avenue. It's on MLK. It's I've seen the problem on Dale Mabry. So it's kind of throughout the city, and so I would assume that the county has similar issues, maybe not as many, but I think it's something that we can look at as a TPO to help solve, because that will help some of that traffic problem that we're all experiencing during the rush hour time. Because right now there are no there's no reason not to do it. People aren't being punished, people aren't being stopped, there's no even information campaign about it. So I'd like to ask staff for a report on Blocks the Box efforts. And Dr. Wong, do you have a suggestion on a date for that?
I think to make that presentation, and thank you for that request, Councilwoman, to make that presentation valuable for the board, I would seek to get in touch with all the local governments and see what measures they're taking currently. And then we can do a little bit of additional research to see what's in the entire suite of engineering options to prevent intersection blockading. Late fall sounds reasonable from a staffing perspective if that's the board's decision.
Okay, well then I'll leave it to you, but say, just ask staff for a report on the Block the Box efforts. I have been working on this with city personnel. I mean, I even had a meeting with our TPD, and they said, yeah, there's nothing we can do. The folks that are doing the red light cameras are like, oh yeah, that's a problem. And if they can't solve it, I would love to know what strategies we have. So thank you.
Secretary Gwynn.
Yeah, I would just add, there is a statute, you can't block the intersection. And you can reinforce that with signs that say, do not block the intersection. And some places I've seen where they actually put pavement markings out that say, do not block the intersection. But the problem is, unless you have the resources to do enforcement on it, it doesn't really change the driver behavior. So I think if you're going to have a strategy, it's going to have to involve law enforcement at some point to be able to enforce. It's already an existing law, it's just rarely enforced.
It's difficult, as a retired law enforcement, it's difficult to enforce that, I'm sure TPD told you, because the nature of the problem is it's gridlock to begin with, and there's no real way to pull these people over because there's nowhere to pull them over to, and you're just adding to the gridlock. Yeah.
Yes, but there has to be something, which is solely why I'm asking for a staff report, just to hear maybe what other communities are doing, what we have the possibility to do. My request initially with the city was, can we fine people? And they said, no, the state doesn't want that because it doesn't want the city to get funding. And I said, I don't care about the funding. I don't want the funding. I just want the traffic to move. So if there are ways that we can move forward and allow the traffic to move, I think that's a win-win for everyone.
Councilmember or Commissioner Wastel.
Thank you. I'm fine with the report, but I would just say I won't support anything that would potentially punish an innocent person. I myself have blocked an intersection here near County Center, but it was because somebody up the way, when traffic was moving, pulled out of all of the street parking that we have, and then they took forever to get and merged into traffic, and it left a bunch of us sitting in the intersection. I was innocent. Traffic was moving when I proceeded into the box, as we're calling it. How would I prove, though, in a court? Because I don't run a dash cam, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to say, hey, 10 cars up. In this case, it was a police officer who blocked the traffic, and none of us could get out of the intersection. So how would you prove that to me in any report, that we wouldn't potentially punish an innocent bystander?
Well, the way I can answer that as a retired deputy, the way the statute's written, if there's, they have to prove that there was no room for you when you entered the intersection. If traffic's moving, you don't have any way to know it's going to stop while you're still in the intersection, then you're not. So anyhow, we're talking about a report. Commissioner Cohen.
I just want to say that admittedly, I found myself in this situation before, and oftentimes I blundered my way into it. And I do think that it would be a good idea to just at least educate people about the problem. And because the more you're aware, the more that you actually do regulate your own behavior. It's like the sharrows on the street about the bicycles. I think they're effective because they make me think about cyclists every time I see them. So I also just wanted to go ahead and move item C because I believe that it's still out there.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Cohen. Second. And a second by Commissioner Bowles. We can have further discussion, but folks, all we're really talking about here is a report. So, Councilmember Gray, Board Member Gray.
No, I just appreciate Councilwoman Hurtak's, demand, or not demand, but request for a report because after, 60-something years, I have been through those intersections and they have not gotten any better. There's a tremendous danger. School buses could barely make their turns. I think, the educational value, I agree with BOCC. Cohen, that it can never hurt us to see what other cities are doing with this conundrum, and perhaps we can find some type of solution, or at least discuss it. Thank you, Councilwoman Hurtak, for bringing that up. Thank you.
Okay, so there are two issues on the table. One, let's vote on the motion. There is a motion to approve the performance targets, and a second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? No nays. Performance targets are adopted. The second issue does not require a formal vote. Is there anybody opposed to Dr. Wong and his staff bringing back a report on this issue to the TPO at a date of his choosing? I hear no opposition to that. Is that going to work?
Certainly, we'd be happy to provide that.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. All right. Status report, streetcar extension update. Brandon Campbell from the City of Tampa is here to explain. Good morning, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Again, Brandon Campbell, Director of Transportation Services for the City of Tampa, and here to update you on our recent actions regarding the streetcar extension. But in order to do so, I think it's helpful to go over some of the history of the most recent efforts and why we are where we are. So I'm sure, excuse me, I'm sure that most of you are somewhat aware of some of this history, but it's instructive, I think, to go back through and see some of the actions that have taken place over the last 10 years or so. So the first document that I am aware of that addressed the streetcar extension as we are contemplating right now was the Envisioned City Center Plan that was put forth, finalized in 2012. And that plan, that report, talked about the streetcar alignment that is in existence in terms of it being seen as a tourist destination as opposed to a more viable local transit option. I will say that in the intervening years since that time, we've done a lot to increase the service availability. It is now fare-free, whereas there used to be a fare, and its usage continues to go up. But the study really looked at the potential to increase that usability and the transit-oriented use by extending it northward from its current terminus. After that 2012 study, there have been a couple of other studies that were put forth by multiple agencies, the first of which in 2014 was put forth by HART. It was called the Tampa Historic Streetcar Extension Study, so very descriptive of what its objective was in the title itself. And then also the TPO and the Downtown Partnership that same year put forth a transit assets and opportunities study that addressed the streetcar extension as part of a more comprehensive suite of transit opportunities. if you don't know, the streetcar as it exists right now was actually built in 2 different phases. The first went from Ybor City to what is now the Dick Greco Plaza, there in front of the convention center. That was completed in 2002. And the second phase was the extension of the streetcar from that terminus up into the Fort Brooke garage. It took the place of some of a previous people mover, elevated people mover that went from Fort Brooke down to Harbor Island and sort of replaced some of that functionality. In 2015, we further studied in a more refined way what the opportunities might be for an extension. Again, you may already know, but the existing streetcar, the rolling stock is generally all historic replica streetcars. They are produced in Iowa by a company called Gomeco. There is one historic streetcar that has been in use at various times over the life cycle of the current line. It is being retired. It's going to be displayed in a prominent place in the Gasworks development. All the rolling stock is owned by Hart, and the line itself is owned by the city of Tampa. You also probably know that we had a fairly extensive streetcar network throughout the city in the mid-century era that was sort of decommissioned in the post-war boom and redevelopment of the city. So as part of that refinement of our process in 2015, we began contemplating entering into the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grants Program. That program has a couple of different options. One is called a New Starts process. That's for a larger project. The one that the extension itself, as envisioned back in 2015 and as currently pursued now, fits better into is called the Small Starts process. It's a $400 million or less overall project cost and a $150 million or less requested contribution from FTA, and so we are within those bounds. It's a little less intensive process, but it still does take a significant amount of due diligence to pursue and to enter into a grant agreement with the FTA. Also in 2015, the study that we had pursued looked at the potential to modernize the streetcar, move away from the historic replica streetcars, and look at a rolling stock that is more similar to what you'd see in a Kansas City or Detroit or Portland. Those tend to have higher capacity, higher carrying capacity. You can load more passengers onto them. They're a little smoother boarding process because of the level of the threshold is closer to curb level. And so that was contemplated as well in that 2015 study. There were several alignments that were initially considered. This is a little bit tough to see because it's pretty small. But initially, as envisioned, there were a few different alignments through downtown. And the takeaway from those 4 different maps there, the 4 colors, is that they all initially were contemplating getting north of where the Fort Brooke garage is, but not beyond the 275, the interstate that cuts across downtown. As a result of that study, the recommendations, I find this slide to be particularly interesting because the study itself talked about anticipated development in downtown and the growth of our urban core. And so I have not changed any of the stats from 2016 on this, but it's interesting to look at it and to see that a lot of what was expected during that time frame has come to fruition, particularly around the Water Street area. The background image just shows the previous surface parking lots that are around the arena if you look closely at it. So that study also had an alignment recommendation that utilized the Florida and Tampa one-way pair. At the southern end, the northbound streetcar extension would sort of take a right turn at Brewerine and then get onto Florida from Brewerine. And the southbound would come down Tampa and jog basically at Whiting Street and then connect to the existing northbound terminus, making that a southbound only stop. Also shown on this map, the turnaround point on the northern end was at Palm Avenue. I will say here and now that we are looking at a slight tweak to that preferred alignment and bringing it a little bit north of Palm, but that's more to come on that with the project development. As you know, it connects 4 major urban core centers, neighborhoods, and if you look at our actual neighborhood map, the extension creates a meaningful transit connection to about a dozen neighborhoods throughout the downtown and Ybor urban core. That study, as I mentioned, looked at modernizing the streetcar, and at the time of the recommendations of that study, its finalization, it did recommend pursuing modernization. Because some time has passed and the costs for infrastructure have gone up pretty substantially in the last 10 years or so, we're no longer looking at modernizing the streetcar and are pursuing an extension only. I will say also, though, as part of that project development that we are currently pursuing, I anticipate that the final design of the extension would accommodate an eventual modernization should we wish to pursue that. So here's our planned schedule from that 2016 study. This slide is actually pulled directly from a presentation that was given in April of 2018. We had entered the process with the FTA's Capital Investment Grants team and laid out a timeline that began in April of 18 and anticipated the start of revenue service just over a year ago in January of 2024. As you all are well aware, the financing, my little call-out boxes are on the slide. So the financing that we had anticipated putting forth for our local match was going to come from the Hillsborough County Transportation Surtax, the 1% all for transportation tax. And so in that timeline as envisioned in spring of 18, we had a plan that we thought was going to be workable. That surtax was invalidated in February of 2021, and at the time we still had some reason for optimism that we could use surtax money for it because of the secondary replacement surtax vote that failed in November of 2022. So this slide and the timeline that it represents is helpful because it gives us sort of a baseline for how the different steps might progress, but the dates are clearly going to be shifted as a result of our lack of available local match financing. So currently, we put out an RFP for project development for the extension. We published it last year. We got a couple of responses, just 2 responses initially in the fall, and then had to advertise for a little bit longer so that we could try to solicit additional interest. And then as of early last month, we had the second phase of our 2-round consultant procurement process. We have entered into negotiation on scope and fee for the extension, for the development of the extension plan. The services that we're anticipating include the NEPA evaluation, close coordination with stakeholders, including FTA, and the assembling of a financial plan for the local match for both the extension itself as well as an operating funding plan moving into the future. FTA will not award a capital investment grant without a plan for operations as well. And so that's my one slide for the current progress and what we are currently doing. I anticipate that the scope and fee negotiation process will take the next 30 to 60 days, and that we will have a consultant that can be ready to present to you or other interested stakeholders soon thereafter, pending council approval, of course. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Board members, are there questions for Mr. Campbell? Councilmember Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that great presentation. you know, you had mentioned in one part about what was going to come to fruition, and we've seen that, you know, look all around, from Water Street and beyond. The streetcar has been absent of fares, fare-free, for the last several years, and we've seen ridership because of that rise tremendously. Sure, who doesn't want a free mode of, you know, not having to pay to move around, you know, and it's not just tourists, because I ride it often and I see local individuals, either people that are coming from other neighborhoods, people that live, work down in this area, and then of course visitors, people that are at the convention center, that go to Ybor, that go to Whiting Station, and then they walk into Curtis Sixon or go to the Riverwalk, whatever it is. But we've seen the success of it. Sure, they're not paying the fee, but ridership continues to increase. The streetcar, of course, things are very expensive now in comparison to when it was built under the Greco administration. The extension under Iorio, I believe, from Greco Plaza to Whiting was $10 million for 4 blocks, if I remember. This is an article I read a long time ago. I think it was $10 million. Now those costs have gone up tremendously. You had mentioned about modernization. I took a day trip to Dallas to see the DART system. Coming from the airport, get where I need to go, they have their rail system, and it's that modern streetcar that you showed, the modern train, or whatever you want to call it. I think maintaining it, you said you're not going to go that route. Maintaining it in that historical replica look is important, because it goes to Ybor City. Yes, Water Street is modern, downtown is modern, but if we do the extension into Tampa Heights is the first, it is the oldest neighborhood, is the first, it goes back to, I think, 1896. There's a marker, I think it's 1896, and it's over there right around Palm in Florida. So Tampa Heights is historically significant. You have Victorian homes, you have you know, the historic bungalows, you have a lot of stuff. So keeping that historic look, should we extend it to Palm, fits into how the neighborhood is. You mentioned the original streetcar system, suspended in 1946. From my research, all the tracks have been lifted up, because I've looked to see, are they just paved over? But they really made it a point to erase that streetcar and modernize, you know, asphalt streets, automobile ownership, and use the interstate. Downtown flourished, Tampa Heights flourished back in the day. Ybor City was what it was. And then people moved out of those neighborhoods. You know, it went from the urban core downtown, it went to the shopping malls. The shopping malls are dying, people are coming back downtown. And it's interesting, it's full circle. People are going back to that streetcar that we pulled up in 1946. I think moving it up to Palm, especially with Armature Works, with the Renaissance in Tampa Heights, with the extension of the Riverwalk, so many things, people will use it. And they'll use it, I mean, I will use it, and I don't live down here. I live in West Tampa, but I would use it as a transportation mode, because if I can say, I'm going to go to Armature Works and I don't have to pay for parking, I'm going to hop on the streetcar and walk a couple blocks. We need to walk. Or I'm going to go to Ybor City and I don't want to pay for parking. I do this many times with friends. Let's go to Ybor. You know, we'll meet down here. They'll come here from nearby. They use it. And I think we'll see, at first, I think it's a worthy investment. 2, I think we'll see the success. 3, it's a shame that they pulled up the streetcar system. I was in San Francisco not too long ago. I rode their streetcar. New Orleans is going to be my next stop to see how they do it. But I think it adds to the character of Tampa, to the history of Tampa, to the fabric of Tampa, and it's a worthy investment. So this is a great investment, and I look forward to what comes from here. Thank you.
Okay, just want to remind the board, this is informational. This is not an action item. So, all right, Councilmember Clendenin.
Thank you, Brandon, for coming out. I was really interested in hearing what you were going to say, because, you know, for people's reference, I get briefings on the streetcar every month, because it's been one of my passion projects when I ran for office. So I get administration briefings on progress and where we are from Vic Beatty, the director of the department. A couple of points to make. I'll say it because you didn't, but part of the extension process of what we've taken on is going beyond Palm to the Columbus vicinity, so that far north, which provides a lot of different linkage to other systems, including Harts, being able to connect with an east-west connection on Columbus, and so provide a really important gateway there. Still gives us the access on Palm to connect east-west on Palm. And I think one of the more important things, and I think some of the folks that I serve with that are represent different types of interest, is the potential for economic development and increase the amount of economic development around this area. And part of the reason why we looked at Columbus, I've had meetings with pretty much every developer and interest group that is looking to create density and development in the city of Tampa and build these like a lot of the projects that we're actually seeing in the Tampa Heights and North Downtown, part of their decision-making of actually coming was basically the gamble that we're going to extend the streetcar through the system. They're developing their projects, incorporating streetcar stops into their projects already. So that's actually already on the books, like the YMCA project we see. There's a lot of projects that were happening. We're developing property in North Tampa on city property. The old Army Navy store and the adjacent parking lots, we're going to incorporate streetcar. Darrell Shaw, which is doing Gasworks major, development in Tampa, is incorporating the streetcar services into that development. So there's going to be a huge return on that investment, which is one of the, I think, the critical elements as public officials. We look at what that is going to bring back. While we might be investing on the front end, but we're going to have a large return on the back end. I think we already, just the existing streetcar line from the southern end of downtown through Channelside and Ybor City, the amount of return on the investment that we can loosely tie to the existence of the streetcar is exponential. I mean, I don't know, first it started off as an aquarium in a dilapidated area of a town, then we built a streetcar, and now we have billions of dollars in development in Water Street and the renewal of Ybor City, now the new development in Gasworks, Encore development, and of course what we see around the convention center downtown and hotel development. Any one of those elements I don't think stand alone in the city of Tampa. I think they all contribute and add incrementally to the environment that creates the economic opportunity and jobs that we see in the explosion of economic opportunity and jobs in the city of Tampa. On the modernization, as much as I like to see the modernization, I think actually, although obviously it's nice to see the historic nature of the streetcar, modernization would have been the way to go. Unfortunately, when the price tag came in, it was just exorbitantly too expensive, and we had to say you can't allow perfect to get into the way of practical and what we can actually accomplish, and what we can accomplish today with the resources that we have and with the support that we've had from Mr. Gwen and FDOT and all of our other partners is the extension of the historic streetcar line. And I think as Brandon eloquently put, we'll make that extension, which by the way, this is going to triple the amount of rail, even because when you're going the one-way routes all the way up, triple the amount of rail that we're actually going to be laying down in Tampa for the streetcar. It's going to service all of these areas. And you'll be able to live from Tampa Heights, North Downtown, and you think about the amount of, anybody that's familiar with North Downtown, there is a lot of vacant property that's controlled by either the city of Tampa, the county, or the state, that we can enter into partnership agreements for economic development that this area will service. But you could live anywhere from Tampa Heights, North Downtown, South Downtown, Water Street, Channelside, Encore, Ybor City, the new Gasworks project, live car-free. You want to jump down and go to the Straz for dinner or for a show and then go to dinner. Don't have to worry about paying a certain company $30 or $40 for parking for one night. You can jump on the streetcar and do that. So frequency of service, we are moving forward. There's a lot. The city of Tampa, I think, Brandon hinted at this. We're putting a lot of time into I know we've been talking about this a little bit, on the sidelines, but the city of Tampa and staff has been devoting countless hours of developing a plan for the implementation and moving this forward. Our legal staff is starting the work of putting together the tax district to be able to fund the operation of this once it's constructed. I think the key part now is making sure that we have the money on the front end to reach the matching funds to be able to start construction. But all these things kind of all have to come together at the same time. It is moving forward, and I definitely want to sit down with you and talk about the transition of this as you move out to another phase of life to make sure that this is protected on the FDOT side, because we're putting a lot of energy and effort in that. We want to make sure that it's working. We've got a lot of citizen support, the administration, the mayor's supportive. I think we've got support on council for this. And before I assume room temperature, I want to ride this extended streetcar. So let's keep pushing forward.
Okay, board members, are there any questions for Mr. Campbell?
Just have a quick question.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Campbell, for your
Mr. Clute.
presentation. I just want to say a couple things. First, I want to thank Mr. Gwynn, Secretary Gwynn, and FDOT for providing the grant for, I think it was $2.7 million to allow this to be, free ridership. But also, I think we modify the hours of operation. I want to talk about that. So I think it used to be every 20 minutes, and the streetcar ran from approximately 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. I think with the change with the grant, I think it had to run from about 7 a.m. to about 11 p.m. Kind of changed that. So it made it a real transportation mode. I noticed the difference around the Channel District. People started riding it for transportation purposes versus just as a tourist attraction. It used to be when there was a Outback Bowl game and you see all these red from the Wisconsin fans riding it or whatever during that week of the Outback Bowl, but otherwise it was pretty much empty. Could you just talk about the hours of operation, the frequency of the service? Is it every 10 minutes, and is it from 7 to 11?
It depends on the event and the time of day, and Councilman Maniscalco may have to give me an assist as a fellow THS board member. But I believe it's 15-minute headways most of the time, and 12-minute headways for heavier usage events. I forget when it stops service in the evening.
It's early enough in the morning, I believe it is 7 a.m., where you can, and I drink local coffee, but if you want to hop off and go to the Starbucks at Greco Plaza, there, or you can get a cup of coffee. By the time you get it, the next car will come up and take you where you need to be within a 12 to 15-minute interval. So it makes sense. And it's early enough for people that are going to go to work, 7 a.m., before it wasn't like that.
Yeah, I actually have an employee who lives in Ybor and uses it to commute to work downtown, so he's like my champion for it.
Board Member Fry.
Just a request, in a future presentation, can you provide a multimodal systems map showing where the connectivity would be, so to show how people could be able to use multimode to get to the system and back?
Yeah, certainly,
Thank
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, board members. Got quite a lengthy report. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
You're running out of time, so.
Start with the next regular TPO board meeting will be held on April 9th. It is early in our state's legislative session. We're tracking a handful of bills somewhat closely. I'll start by giving you an update on the most important 5. House Bill 85 would revise the criteria for determining a hazardous walking condition for students. That now has a matching Senate companion and is moving forward. Senate Bill 110 would create a public infrastructure smart technology grant program for eligible rural communities to deploy systems and applications that use connectivity, data analytics, and automation to improve public infrastructure by increasing efficiency, enhancing public services, and promoting sustainable development. That one does not have a match, but there are some comparable bills in both the Senate and 2 in the House. One of those comparable bills, the Senate Bill 1662, is sponsored by Senator Collins. This would create a Florida Transportation Research Institute charged with researching transportation technologies and supporting workforce development across a range of industries, including technical, mechanical, as well as advanced college degrees. Planning was included among those jobs. Senate Bill 1318 would prohibit using any handheld device while driving, tightening up some of that language. Currently, there's a ban on texting while driving in state statute, but this would be expanded to prevent any handheld device and establishes specific penalties for violating that in a construction zone when workers are present. That bill does have a matching House companion. And last, HB 567 would abolish the MPO Advisory Council, revise membership of the Cutter Advisory Board, and allow FDOT to proactively acquire properties to preserve right-of-way for future projects. That one does not yet have a match, but has a similar House bill and 2 similar Senate bills. So I'm tracking all those closely, and I'll give you an update next month. Next, I want to, this is not in the addendum or on the agenda, kind of breaking news. Yesterday, an interim rule was published in the Federal Register, which would remove the Council on Environmental Quality Regulations, which implement NEPA from federal regs. So massive implications for project development if that rule is finalized. Comments are due by March 27th. And I believe that is it for me, unless members have any questions.
Questions for Dr. Wong? Okay, very good. Thank you, Dr. Wong. Old or new business, I have one thing real quick that I just want to see if there's head nods on this. I'd like to suggest that we extend a request at DOT, probably Mr. Gwynn's successor, I suspect, to come and present to us on the new orders from the National Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation that are mirrored. We heard earlier from Mr. Fernandez, he was reading from DOT's orders, announcements, and the language is just pretty much plucked out of the federal language. But we had a little brief discussion about that, but now that this is shaken down a little bit further, I'd like to invite them to come when they're prepared to maybe present that to us to provide some clarity. Is that everybody agreeable to that? Do you think that's doable, Secretary? You don't care because you're not going to have to do it, right?
It's doable. I think we're still digesting some of it like everyone else and looking for implementation guidance. Right now, it's not entirely clear, but we're waiting. But certainly, once we have a better handle on everything, we'd be glad to come in.
Okay. It looks like the board's agreeable to that, Dr. Wong, if you can coordinate with DOT at the appropriate time when it would be useful. Thank you. Other old or new business, board members? Council Secretary Gwynn.
Yeah, real quick, two things I wanted to mention. One, in the last week of March, we're going to open up the new span at Howard Franklin. So probably around the 24th, 25th, you will see them transition the traffic onto the new bridge. So now the express lanes won't be open yet, but all of the general purpose lanes will be going from the one bridge to the new bridge. And then over the remainder of this year, you'll see them rehab the 1990 bridge, the middle bridge that's going to remain. Then they'll shift traffic over onto that and tear down the old bridge. So that's moving really well. The other thing I wanted to mention was, I think everybody had heard I'm retiring at the end of April. I'm glad to announce that earlier this week, they have named Justin Hall as my successor. It'll be a seamless transition. Most of you probably have dealt with Justin. And so he couldn't be here today. He's actually in Orlando. But we'll overlap for the next month and a half or so, and then he'll take on the wheel full strength, and I'm certain he's going to do great. So I just wanted to let everybody know he'll be starting very soon.
Well, Justin's a great guy, but he's got big shoes to fill. So, yeah. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other old or new business board members? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to acknowledge our CEO, Mr. Wong, and staff for doing a great job with the Safe Streets Summit. They had a tremendous turnout, great participation from the community. I wanted to acknowledge his work with that.
Thank you, Mr. Hartfield.
I appreciate that, but really the thanks and the gratitude, my gratitude goes to you all. Mr. Hartfield was a panelist and spoke a lot about his ideas, some frustrations, and thoughts for how we could improve safety across the county, and I think his perspective, as well as the others, was very valuable, and I received a lot of positive comments from the attendees. So thank you to all of you for empowering us to put on such a great event, and looking forward to the next one next year, not hosted by us, which makes it even sweeter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hartfield. Anything else?
And to
Councilmember
piggyback
Maniscalco.
on Dr. Wong, a happy belated birthday. I wish him a happy birthday. It was a couple of days ago, but since we're all here, he's 29, so very excited.
And he was out at the Temple Terrace Bike with the Mayor event on, I think that was actually your birthday or the day before. That was your birthday, wasn't it?
That was my birthday.
It was his birthday, yeah. So he was riding a little slower than he did the year before. But any other old or new business? Well, Secretary, I think I speak for everybody here. We wish you well, and I think everybody here knows and loves Justin, and we're going to enjoy working with him. But you will be missed by this board, and you always seem to have the right answers at the right time with the right delivery. So you will be missed. And we'll give you a plaque at a later meeting. Anything else? Commissioner? I don't know if he's. Very good. Good to see everybody. Have a great day, and we will stand adjourned.